In this episode of Hashtag
Connect Africa Moyane, I'm speaking to Shireen Jafhta, she's a marketing strategist with more than 20 years of experience. She's worked in different industries, both in media and outside of media. Recently, she's been involved in mentoring and coaching young Africans in different parts of our continent in her space of content creation, media space, and marketing. Well, she's with us. Shireen, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me.
20 odd years of a career in the marketing and media world. That's a long time. Where have you been and how has it been for you broadly?
I would say maybe a quarter of a century already. Well, close to
You make it sound like a long time when you say quarter of a century.
Well, I have to talk about it. I spent 10 years in broadcasting. I spent 10 years in ad agency, and I spent about, I think just over 4 years in corporate. And, you know, it's something that I'm very happy that the path that I followed. It's not something that I planned, but I almost found that my career sort of gravitated and navigated to each of those environments where I could diversify my skills.
While you were diversifying your skills, was it always around marketing?
It was always around marketing. It was always around broadcasting. It was always around trying to find solutions.
Yeah, it's a diverse experience in terms of industry as well. Although the core was still marketing, which of these different sectors fired you up the most?
Well, believe it or not, when I grew up, I actually wanted to become an archaeologist. So how I ended up in marketing, everyone can tell you the same story because I'm sure I'm not the only one who said that. I never dreamt I'd be a marketer. You know, for me, marketers always sell you false hope, and I always grew up with that notion, understanding that, you know, we're here to sell false hope. And I think what I liked about the commonalities around, you know, wanting to be an archaeologist versus now finding solutions, it almost has the same thread in terms of trying and creating this narrative of finding something.
Yeah, I was just thinking, an archaeologist, they go around digging for old truths. Marketers, you have to connect with current human truths.
Yes, 100%. Completely agree with you.
So you had to marry those two. When does Shireen Jafhta's journey begin in marketing?
So my journey, actually, funny enough, I come from humble beginnings, very, very poor family. I mean, I remember days where we had no food in the house. I had a very strong mom. She was the breadwinner. And, you know, unfortunately, coming pre and post-apartheid, I didn't have the opportunity to go and further my studies at the time. So my first job is I needed to jump into, you know, some secretarial admin job. And one of my family friends had said to me, listen, we're looking for a Girl Friday. And I went for this interview, and this man said to me...
No, hold on. Many young viewers might not know what is a Girl Friday, okay?
A girl...
If you go back home in South Africa, do you mind explaining just briefly for our audience, what would a Girl Friday be?
So a Girl Friday is someone that sits in the front desk, very pretty, answer the telephone, take messages,
what would today call receptionist, kind of?
Yeah, but it's a little bit of admin, office admin. It's a little bit. It's a little bit further than just the receptionist. So you're doing some accounting. You're doing some, you know, office management. You're doing it's
That's an old world in South Africa.
It's a very old world.
Multi-skilled. Do they still say Girl Fridays today? From what you know?
I don't know if they say Girl Friday
anymore, but it's an interesting expression. I haven't heard it in a long time. So you began like that admin front desk type person?
No, I did not. And that's where my journey began. So I went for this interview, and the gentleman said, okay, he asked me a few Girl Friday things, and I was like, oh, but I can do this, you know, because I started working part-time since the age of 16. So I always, for me, working at that age, at 19, I knew exactly, you know, I could manage the situation or manage what was given to me, the tasks. And I think 2-3 weeks later, he called me back and he said, Shireen, I got good news and bad news. I said, well, and he says, what do you want to hear first? I said, you know, just give me the bad news, because then the good news would offset the bad news. And he ended off saying, well, the bad news is you did not get the job. And immediately I went into this like defensive mode and like, why? What's so difficult in answering a phone and taking messages? Any idiot can do that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry that I wasn't good enough for your company, blah, 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 blah. And he said, and I said, it was really nice. Thanks for inviting me to come for an interview. It was not my time, so thank you for the opportunity. And as I was about to switch the phone off, he said, but wait a minute. I said, wait, what? Like, you've just ruined my day. Because I didn't owe him anything. And he said, well, the good news is that I actually want you to come straight into my media buying or media agency environment. And lo and behold, did not know at the time that this man was quite a heavyweight called Bernie Rayner in the industry. And he had taken me under his wing. What he found was that I had exceptionally good negotiation skills, which most people today fear when I walk into a room.
So as young as that, that's when you begin this journey.
And
that was in Cape Town.
No, it was in Johannesburg.
Johannesburg.
And he groomed me, sent me back into school, and and I've been very fortunate. After Bernie left the country, I had started at SABC3, and I started working at the channel, and that too was by accident. Someone went on maternity leave, and I filled in for the post to fill in because I think emotionally, I thought, here my mentor's going. I was latching onto this person. He was doing everything, showing me the ropes, and the fear of losing. And so the reactive thing that I did was I tried to find a different job. And there was this post at SABC3, and I ended up, at SABC for almost 5 years.
Interesting that one of the reasons that I thought, let's have a chat with you, is this mentorship thing.
Yes.
You were a beneficiary early
Yes.
on in your stages so you understand the importance
Yes.
of that. We will talk about it a little bit more. But now, just your journey from the SABC, you go in there by accident. What's next, and how long were you at the SABC?
So I worked at the SABC and the channel for, I think, just over 5 years, but I've always been into the broadcasting, even in my other roles that I played in developing formats or strategy. For SABC3, I ended up project managing their daily soapies, which is Isidingo, Top Billing, bringing in new formats.
So you met all those superstars. You met all
Yeah,
the
I mean,
actors,
I just had a conversation earlier with your crew about, the days when Bonanga just started on Top Billing, project managing that for the channel, signing off trade exchange deals. And trade exchange deals is when, someone like Khalix gives you gives you a suit as Dan, and ETV gives him free airtime to the value of the suit, and that's what you call a trade exchange or a barter deal these days. So I used to evaluate those, sign it off. I reported into the head of programming and into the CEO at the time, the general manager of the channel.
I'm just listening. Okay, you had a bit of a business kind of thing, media buying agency. You end up in the media house itself. For what are the lessons, just in that first experience or the first few years, what are the key lessons for you there? What did you take out?
So the first few lessons for me, I mean, I'm going back, Dan, if I tell you, over 20 years,
Yes.
compared to now where marketers or media agencies have these sort of tools that preempt things.
Yeah,
for them,
I don't want us to talk too much about today because I'm getting there. Yeah.
So back in the day, we had to do everything manually. We had to type out schedules. And we used typewriters for those. And everything was around relationships. Everything was built around relationships. Everything that you had was based on the fact that you had good relationships with certain media owners, with certain production houses, with certain newspapers, with editors. Relationships was such an important part of that journey. And I think for me, what was so important was that I actually carried those relationships with me over the years as I've grown in the industry.
Did that then stand you in good stead when you were in corporate South Africa?
It did, because it's, for me, it's always, I look at new talent coming in, and I look at new people coming into environments that I'm so au fait with. I understand it, and I can see this young person trying to impress me, but it's easy for me to pick up the phone and phone the person that I've come along with in 20 years that's probably now sort of grown in that industry or that company, and just have a very good conversation and still empower the person that, that they've employed.
If there was anything you do differently, looking back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, what would it be?
If there's anything that I do differently, I mean, I became a mom at a very young age, and so sense of responsibility for me started at 22, and I'm actually happy that it happened that way, because when I got to 40, or just about turning 40, I just realized that I just wanted to spread my wings. I've had the kids, I've sort of established my career, and all I want to do now is travel, because they do say travel is like, it's the tangible encyclopedia as opposed to reading something, you're experiencing it. And I only started traveling, I think, in my early 40s, only 16 countries. So I'm getting there.
So the sense of responsibility would be something you'd handle differently?
I wouldn't know. Yeah, I think I would. But I also think that it kind of made me resilient, all the trials, all the lessons, on the trying to find a balance between building a career, empowering myself, a sense of responsibility where I was raising a child and, trying to be an example to this baby, trying to balance my time between the two, because that was one thing time management, I really sucked at it.
Yeah. In corporate South Africa, you worked in different companies, and time there is everything. They say time is money. You mentioned time management was a problem. How did you cope when you got with corporate South Africa with time management?
I must say that I'm one of those very, very bad people. It's not something that I've outgrown. I like putting something on paper and bringing it to life, so I just don't know when to switch off. So that for me is, until the project's done, it's something that I probably just don't know how to separate myself from it. I like empowering and I like delegating, but I'm also very hands-on. So it's something that I had to learn to walk with me, and I just realized that it's just part of me. It's just who I am.
Okay. Now, Shireen, I want to move our conversation to the next part in my mind, which is the world of marketing. 25 years ago, it was different.
Yes.
From what it is today.
Yes.
Okay. And you've worn different hats. You've worked in different sectors. In addition to technology, what else has changed in marketing? Because technology has enabled so many things, as you alluded to a little bit earlier. For you, if you look back and you look now, besides the manual labor that you had to undergo as a marketer those years, to the technological advance of today, what else has changed when you look at the world of marketing, particularly in South Africa and on our continent?
One, I think the job criteria has changed, because we're living in an accelerated world. My last stint being part of the marketing team that launched Time Bank, so playing a pivotal part and working across 3 or 4 different countries when I started at Time Bank, building the brand.
Time Bank is one of the new digital banks,
which is one of the new
South Africa, yes.
New digital banks. Yes. I had to work across 3, 4 different countries, which is not, it's not normal in the sense of where I come from and where, I accelerated to and what digital allowed us to do. And I think it's almost a different sort of empowering, but there's now a gray area in terms of, the way you look at marketing then and the way you look at marketing now, because of the tools. I speak about the digital acceleration. I talk about being data-centric. I talk about being human-centric, because that's where we're going. We're going more human-centric now. And then there is the customer-centric side, which is what everyone talks about, being customer-centric, data-centric.
The end user side.
It's the end user. It's knowing your customer, speaking to them, the way, customers want to be spoken to in a way that you actually know.
Isn't it odd?
They want, like...
Yeah, but isn't it odd, though, that in a world where there's such accelerated development and investment, we are lacking when it comes to the human-centric side of things.
Yes, it is. And this is going back to your question around how marketing's changed. I think before we could put a television ad on TV or on radio, and it kind of creates the awareness, and you assume as a company people are going to come out of interest to you. But now how marketing's changed outside of digital, it's that trust, that emotion you feel towards the brand, and marketers have to start layering that. They have to start building trust outside of digital, and they have to start building the fact that they actually know who you are. So there's the KYC, know your customer. As Dan, if you were if you were a customer at the bank or any retail store, you expect those people to know that what I have for breakfast in the morning, what my dog's name is, that I've got a doctor's appointment next week. And if you don't, corporates break that trust.
Do you think currently advertisers in South Africa and the rest of the continent are managing? Because to build trust, it has to be the appropriate message. I mean, there's so many challenges. The world has become grayer and more complex by the day.
After leaving Time Bank late last year, I took a bit of a sabbatical. I just needed a bit of time out after getting to 2 million customers. I took a sabbatical, and then I came back into the industry this year in terms of trying to find my purpose. But my journey through Time Bank, sitting on the client side, I could find or understand the gaps in the market. I could understand the gaps of how an agency is, putting their strategy together to address the client's needs. And I'm also seeing the gaps in corporate in trying to, when they brief an agency, assuming that the agency is going to come up with the solution. And not understanding that the customer lifestyle cycle, there needs to be a loop, and it needs to be closed. And it's very difficult because not everyone knows how to do that. If you haven't diversified your skills, if you haven't understood the principles of the human nature and behavior, it's very difficult for a marketer to be able to close those gaps. I'm finding now with COVID and having worked in finding the gaps in terms of skills, having come in a corporate environment, sitting on the corporate side, looking into the agency side, looking into the broadcaster side, looking inward into the business side, understanding what that meant in terms of closing the loop globally, because I worked across 3-4 countries, and bringing it back into South Africa, and perhaps in the richer sense Africa, in the continent. Digital is accelerated. I'm seeing a lot of the communication is around fintech. I just saw Nigeria now, with the impact of COVID, the explosion of fintech and digital banking. There's opportunities there, and it's great. But for me, what COVID and the isolation of COVID done, and what is the gray area now, as opposed to being business to customer and business to business, is the human to human principle. And
do you think the pandemic has accentuated that?
It's elevated that. We're in the human to human element now, which is, you see the explosion of e-commerce. Why did e-commerce explode? E-commerce exploded based on, one, social distancing and needing access to goods. But it also was around the social distancing part, the fear of getting corona, which is the behavior side of the human nature. Because what the people being in isolation meant was, they were removed from their loved ones. They couldn't do things for them. So when they were doing things, they were doing it out of love because they were missing the loved ones. They couldn't touch and feel. That's what we are. We want to touch, we want to feel, we want to engage. We want to look at people's into their eyes, And yes, technology had helped us enable certain things, but it didn't give us the connectivity. And that's what's accelerated the behavior now that marketers will need to touch and tap into.
And you think it's beginning to happen?
I think it's beginning to happen. I mean, there were 1 or 2 brands you and I spoke about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had our regular our regular catch up, and it was around. And I'm finding, people are, the human nature at the moment want a sense of belonging. So any brand that is giving something back to a community, or are showing that they're, uplifting anything in the world to make things better, people are sort of moving towards that.
But it has to be meaningful. It can't
It has
just be symbolic or for the sake of. The brands have to do it in a meaningful way.
It has to be meaningful. And I've seen one or two brands, you know, and the question I ask myself is there a gray area if you're spending marketing money to get consumers to buy into your brand, into your charity? You're spending money. Is that legal? And I think you kind of broke it down for me when you said to me, yes and no. You know, you can spend it, because for me, I've not done outside of Heartlines working with Mandela, where we could not use any brands, we could not advertise and associate brands to a CSI or CSR project. You know, you're finding marketing campaigns leaning more to, I'm spend so much or buy this product, and a portion of this goes into this charity. And my question always goes to the fact that that's great, but that's your charity, not mine. And you're forcing me, basically.
So how important is it to give consumers and customers choice? I mean, in this space of enabling communication that says, I'm a brand, I've got products, and I'm doing good as well in the community.
Yes, but I think it's important now where most people want to drive the narrative of a brand. They want to feel like they're part of the journey. Yes, I'm going to support your cause and I love what you're doing and you're always top of mind. You've brought the brand love, so I'm always going to have that, followers that follow me. But you're always going to have to develop new growth. And what you find from a human-to-human connectivity now, in terms of making sure that's sort of ingrained in your strategy when you're doing marketing, is that people want to feel like they're part of driving that brand narrative.
So they're part of those choices as well that the brand makes.
They're part of the choices, and you almost make them believe, or you feel like they were part of the choices, and the brand is following what they want you to follow.
Yeah, it must be difficult being a brand nowadays, because there's so many challenges in society. I mean, just look at South Africa, the kind of problems we're facing, and Africa is a continent. It's a youthful energy. Hi, I'm Dan Moyane. Thanks for watching our show. When you think about Africa, sometimes you think about the negative, but there's a lot of enriching, uplifting stuff that happens. And on this show, #Connect Africa Moyane, that's what we do. We seek to uplift. Please continue watching, liking, sharing, and commenting. And you can also subscribe to our show by clicking on the button below. Thank you.